We are hearing a lot of noise about Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, so my question is why? And you have a bunch of other questions, so let's do them on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen to this show every single day. I appreciate y'all so very much. You make this thing go. If you are new here, hello and welcome. This is a great day to join because it is Twitter Tuesday and I'm answering your questions on Twitter Tuesday. You can send them to me whenever you want. Google Doc down in the show notes or send me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can shoot them to me on Twitter as well if you want. At Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is SiriusXM or YouTube, even Amazon, Fire, or Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. And you can also search out on the SiriusXM app any old sports team and find hometown broadcasts of their games, live radio broadcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Boy, howdy. Y'all had a lot of questions. I got a ton of responses to my weekly call for questions, ton of responses in the Google Doc, emails, you guys flooded me. I love it. Absolutely love it. If I did not get to your question, because there's no way I'm getting to all of these, check the library of podcasts for the last few weeks. Some of the questions were just like, I did a whole show on that. Some people are like, what do you want in a bridge quarterback? Talked about it yesterday. What do you think of JJ McCarthy? Did a whole show on that. And so that answer is going to be way more in depth. Just go listen to that one. So if I don't get to your question, that's worth a shot. And it's always worth trying to ask again if I don't get to it, because maybe I just cut it for time. With that said, let's move on to the first question, which comes from Bradley Knorr, who asks, you always say that leaks are intentional. Someone is purposefully putting out information to their benefit. So with these rumors of the Falcons being all in on Kirk, who would be putting out that information and why? Okay, so let's catch everybody up if you missed it, if you're not super inundated with social media like I am. So here's the deal. There is a lot of noise about Kirk going to Atlanta. Like a lot. Every reporter has said something about it that would be the kind of person that has a rumor report from the combine. It is the thing the Vikings were talking about, and they didn't seem to be trying very hard to keep it. Or it's the thing that Kirk Cousins' agent, I would say, is talking about, and he wasn't really trying to keep it a secret. I heard it in private channels. I saw it everywhere in public channels. It's everywhere. It maybe the funniest one is from Florio, who said that they, like a credible source said that he's preparing to move his family to Atlanta, which that's such a weird, what is that? Did you talk to a realtor? I don't know what that means. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that you get with him. So it feels like Kirk to Atlanta is like on the cusp, right? And Adam Schefter even said 2 main suitors are Minnesota and Atlanta. But with what we are hearing and what we already kind of pieced together, that Cousins was testing the waters in free agency. And suddenly all this Atlanta stuff comes out. It sounds like he found something that he liked. And now it's going to come down to if the Vikings are going to be willing to outbid that. So who would leak this to that question? Kirk. Or I guess his agent, right? Mike McCartney would leak that and say, hey, everybody shout from the rooftops that Kirk Cousins is about to go to Atlanta. Let's really put the pressure on Minnesota. Let's make them super worried that Kirk Cousins is going to leave and see if they want to bring their price up a little bit. That would be who who stands to gain from there being this sort of imminent departure, right? Like who stands to gain? Well, Kirk himself, because maybe the Vikings get nervous and maybe they up their offer. Dobbs to Diggs asks, I'm seeing and hearing a lot of stuff about the Vikings allowing Kirk's contract to expire, but still being a suitor after free agency kicks off. With $28 million in dead cap locking in, if he's not extended by then, what is the justification for still going after him after the dead money is locked in? Oh no, you know what? I'm not going to do that one yet. Another interesting report, just while I'm here, came from Dan Graziano at ESPN, who had said about a month ago that Daniil Hunter's contract situation was pretty much on hold until Kirk got figured out. And in a column this week has said, hey, you're talking to Daniil Hunter. So if you put those two things together and read the tea leaves, it sure implies that the Vikings have their answer on Kirk. It really feels like we're about to, like, I don't know. This feels like we just got past the like hump in the roller coaster, and it feels like we're just starting to go down it, right? And we're picking up speed. I don't know. Maybe there's still time, right? There's still plenty of time for a plot twist to happen. But boy, the signs are starting to appear. Anyways, Dobbs to Diggs, dude. Goodness. Asks, I'm seeing/hearing a lot about the Vikings allowing Kirk's contract to expire, but still being a suitor after free agency kicks off. With his $28 million in dead cap locking in if he's not extended by that, what's the justification for still going after him after the dead money is locked in? I see what you're getting at here, and I agree with it. That's a really inefficient way to go about things. The justification would be, we don't want any dead money. We want to get out of this void year nonsense thing. So we're going to let him walk. We're going to let all that void year money accelerate. We're going to eat it all this year, and then we'll sign him to a deal. But to do that, you're either going to have like a $50 million cap hit for Kirk Cousins in 1 year, which seems unwise to say the least, or you're going to backload that contract and you're going to end up spreading around the money the same-ish way anyways. But I guess that would also be the logic. If all of that dead money accelerates, but then it gets replaced with like contract year money, then you're replacing it with like non-guaranteed money essentially. But then Kirk has to agree to non-guaranteed money, or you're replacing it with fully guaranteed base salary, which is now restructurable and malleable, and maybe you can get more flexibility that way. But again, you still have to get him to the contract, and it feels like it's pretty easy to, like those void years and signing bonuses were designed with the express purpose of keeping cap hit spread out. So unspreading it just to spread it again feels a little counterintuitive, right? And what it also feels like to me is if they let him walk and they let that dead cap charge happen, they decided. That's what it really is. It's not that there's a secret like reason that it's smarter to do that. If they wanted to do that, they would strike a deal with him and then they'd say, yeah, he's going to hit free agency and then we're going to re-sign him, but they'd like sell it as a procedural move. No, if they're going to let him walk and test free agency, they chose. They got together and they said, hey, if we re-sign him, it's going to be more efficient because a bunch of money is going to spread out into future years for us without us having to add anything. Do we want that? And then they go, we still don't think he's worth it. Okay, hey, it got harder. Do we want it now? I don't think so, right? So I don't see it happening. Hey, doors open, right? What if he goes out into the world and everybody's like, yeah, we don't really want to give you any contract. And he goes, okay, well, I guess if I'm playing for the veteran minimum somewhere, because everyone thinks my Achilles is terrible and everybody thinks I'm the worst quarterback ever, and I have to play for the vet minimum, I guess I'll come back and play for Minnesota. Like the door will be open, but my guess is if he's leaving, it's because he already knows he can find something better. If he leaves, he leaves. Everybody knows what they had to know to make that decision. Billy Petrillo asks, thoughts on Baker Mayfield potentially coming in to be the new QB. This was a rumor. I super apologize. I forget where that one came from. But the Vikings have been linked to just about every quarterback, so it's hard to keep all that straight. But Baker, to me, it depends on the cost. I think with Baker does feel like a bit of a bridge quarterback, but because of the season he had in Tampa and something of that resurgence, it feels like he's going to command a little bit more than that. He is somebody that feels like he's going to get like a 2-3 year deal. Honestly, putting him in a similar category to Kirk Cousins, maybe not quite as much money, but where like, I don't think anybody brings in Cousins to be like a 1 year bridge to the rookie that gets benched in week 7. That's not what Kirk Cousins, that's Jacoby Brissett, right? That's not Kirk Cousins. And I think Baker Mayfield is much more on that side. So if you're going to pay somebody to like be your guy that can take an otherwise complete roster to the Super Bowl, that was just a QB away, like that's the kind of sell that you've got with Kirk. And I think it's the sell you have with Baker. Why not just keep Kirk, right? Like, I don't really see why you would go from Kirk to Baker Mayfield. I don't even think you save that much money. So I don't think that that's in the cards. I'm sure that they're doing due diligence and are plenty interested, but I don't really see it in the cards. And plus, I was just talking to David Harrison on Locked On NFL about Baker Mayfield. Still sounds like him going back to Tampa Bay is the much more likely option. Kojo asks, with all the dead cap hits, will the Vikings have more or less money to spend if Kirk and Hunter walk? So we talked about this a lot on Locked On Vikings, and you can find other cap calculation stuff to get more detail on it. But since that's definitely a question for a newer listener, and hello, newer listeners, let me give you the broad strokes that we've been talking about. So the dead cap hits of 28.5 mil, and I want to say it's like 14 mil for Kirk and Hunter respectively, will spread back out if they extend him, but it obviously depends on how much they extend him to. If Kirk Cousins makes $20 million, which would be a pretty low number, I'd be pretty surprised if he made that, but it makes the math easy. If he made $20 million, 10 million of his dead cap stays in this year, so he would make $30.5 million. So his cap hit would go up 2 mil from what it would be if he left. Problem is, a whole bunch of dead money gets forwarded into future years. It's got to be paid off eventually. So you are adding 20 mil to the equation of how much the Vikings need to account for Kirk Cousins on the salary cap. But you're deferring it, and deferred payment makes it easier to deal with, especially when you don't have interest on that, right? It's not deferring a credit card loan. I've got a bunch of other cues to get to, and I want to make sure I get to as many as possible, even though I know I'm not going to get to all of them. So we'll rapid fire through some of these as we can. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by BetterHelp, online therapy made easy. I've been in therapy for a long time, and it has definitely helped me, especially as somebody that has a lot of trouble regulating my schedule. And I make my own hours nowadays, so it's even harder. Like, I don't have like a commute and an alarm that has to be set up at a time I need to be a certain place all the time. That's the kind of thing that that has really helped me with. But for whatever's going on with you, if it's something like that, something more serious, something a lot less serious, like dealing with sports team anxiety, I know y'all have a lot of that. BetterHelp can get you set up with somebody that is right for you. It's all online, very convenient, and designed to be suited to your schedule. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Hey, thanks a million for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. I reiterate, if you asked a question such as, hey, do you think J.J. McCarthy can be a day one starter? I got that question. Or do you think that, Jaden Daniels is going to fall past pick 3? Or those kinds of questions, there's a really good chance that the information you're looking for is on my Patreon page, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL, where I've done film breakdowns of all of the major 6 quarterbacks that have ever been discussed in the first round. Adam Schefter said all 6 could go in the first round. Like, that's a thing. So those 6 guys, there are free breakdowns on patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. You don't need to sign up to watch, although I would, of course, appreciate your support. Let's move on with these Twitter Tuesday questions. Next one comes from the Nate Adkins, he made it all caps, who said, with all this talk about the QB situation, wouldn't the best course of action to be to let Kirk walk, not draft a QB, and keep Josh Dobbs? We can change the playbook and just not tell him he's at his best when he has no clue what's going on. So that was a joke, clearly. But the Josh Dobbs thing is still, there's an interesting kernel of conversation there. You would obviously want to draft a quarterback. Josh Dobbs as the bridge would probably compete with Nick Mullins, and I don't know if he would beat Nick Mullins. So to me, it does not meaningfully add to Nick Mullins. I don't mind the idea of bringing Josh Dobbs into camp just because he's probably going to be cheap or whatever. I don't think it prevents you from doing anything else. And I don't know if he would make it to the first preseason game. Like, you'd have 5 QBs in camp and one of them gets cut when you needed to replace somebody because of an injury or something like that. Mark Simpson asks, can Cousins or Hunter be put on the franchise tag? The short answer is no. The long answer is that because those contracts are voiding out instead of just expiring, and the calendar that it's all about the dates that things are set up to trigger on, is after the franchise tag deadline. So it doesn't work out that way. And I believe Danielle Hunter has just a no tag clause in general, like just a straight up, no, you may not tag me because you just didn't want to be tagged. So no, you may not put them on the franchise tag. I don't think that would be a great idea anyways. Austin asks, do you see Harrison Smith taking another pay cut to stay with the team? There are two outcomes I see with Harrison Smith that feel likely to me. I mean, I wouldn't be super shocked if something outside this scope happened, but I see him either just retiring or taking a pay cut to stay with the Vikings. His cap hit is pretty substantial, and it's pretty clear that you're not going to get that paid off. So I would be pretty surprised if we didn't see like a pay cut or cut kind of thing with Harrison Smith, where he said, okay, here's what we're going to pay you, right? We're not going to pay you this 14 mil. We'll pay you 6 mil. And if you think you can do better than that on free agency, go ahead. Bless you. Good luck. You can go out to free agency, test that. And hey, if you don't get it, come back and play on that 6 mil. Doors open, offers open, but you may go test that out. And some players do. This is how Adam Thielen got cut last year. He thought, I think I can beat what you guys are doing. And he went out and he got a 3-year deal from Carolina. He way beat what the Vikings were offering him. Carolina paid way more. So good for him. And then there are some players like Harrison Smith who will take the deal and say, yeah, that was unguaranteed salary anyways. I don't really think I'm going to get it. Okay. So I see that, but honestly, I could still see him just saying, you know what, I'm going to hang him up. He might drag his feet on that, though. I mean, this is a tough decision to make, so patience is a virtue here. Mitch D says, how well or poorly could Brian Burns fit in the Vikings defense? I don't know. There are some guys that it's like scheme fit's just not a thing with them. They're just good. Like every scheme needs a good edge rusher. Every scheme needs somebody who can win off the edge and beat a tackle, who can set the edge in the run. There is no scheme that can't use Brian Burns. And that's why he's going to make a crap ton of money. The reason Mitch is asking probably is because the Panthers are not going to tag Brian Burns. He is going to hit free agency, that was reported on Monday that, sources say he's going to, I think that was like a Rappaport tweet. So good luck, but he's going to command a lot of money specifically because every team can use him. Every team is going to be interested in him. And with more suitors comes a higher price. David asks, if we can't get a QB in the first round, should we consider a corner like Quinyon Mitchell? So I don't know how much work I'm going to get done on the corners at all here. So you might be asking the wrong guy about corners. Which name is who there? I know there's a ton of corners, and the idea of a corner in general, totally an option. Absolutely. Personally, it's just I'm going to focus on D-line because that's where I'm trying to grow right now. But I think I probably prefer them to take a D-lineman over a cornerback, but not strongly. Like if they took a cornerback and they let a D-lineman go and they passed on it on like an edge, that is fine to me. So sure. Yeah. Do you think he's like a guy that you would take at 11? I have no idea. But if he is, then yeah, like position wise, sure. Joe Boo asks, how does Russ's contract break down if he signs with the Vikings with a $25 million signing bonus and a $15 million roster bonus in 2025, and then a league minimum salary in the first year, given the offset language in the Broncos contract? Okay, so yeah, the Broncos officially released Russell Wilson. They did the post-June thing. They're going to incur $85 million in cap penalties over the next 2 years. Woof. And to make matters worse, a lot of that comes from guaranteed money. And that guaranteed money contains offset language, which means if I am in your team, you're my player, and I pay you $10 million fully guaranteed with offset language, but then I say, you know what, this isn't working, we're going to cut you. You go into free agency and another team pays you $5 million. That $5 million is no longer a part of my salary cap charge. I only have to pay what's left over, which is also $5 million. I probably should have picked a less even number there. So I pay 5, you pay 5. That's how it works. And if your next contract is the veteran minimum, I get the veteran minimum deducted from that 10 million, but I have to pay whatever is left over against the cap. You're getting that 10 mil from somewhere, right? It got guaranteed to you. Your new team will pay whatever that team pays, and your old team will pick up the bill for the rest. I think that number for Russell Wilson is up to 17 million in like the guaranteed base salary was 17 million. So if his new team pays him 20 million, the Broncos don't have to pay any of their 7 million in offset. If they pay him the veteran minimum, the Broncos have to pay almost all of that $17 million in salary cap. So with your league minimum salary, his cap hit would be a league minimum for the Vikings, and the Broncos would have a big problem that we don't care about. And then with the $25 million signing bonus and roster bonus stuff, His 2025 cap hit would be like 20 mil or something. I'm not going to do all that. It's what, 5 million or 15 mil from the roster bonus, and then 8 1/3 from the signing bonus. So that's 23 1/3 plus the 3 mil in his salary. So 26 1/3 would be 26 mil and a third would be the 2025 salary. And then the 2026 salary would be 18 1/3. And then his 2024 salary would be 5 mil plus the league minimum. 8.3 mil plus the league minimum, which I don't know off the top of my head. It'd be like 11 mil or something like that. Those would be the cap hits. And the Broncos would hate that, but there's also nothing they can do about it. MN Sports Appreciator says, I'm hearing all this crazy Joe Milton throw stuff. Dude has a rocket hitting 70-yard throws in stride. Haven't heard you mention his name once this year. Can he only throw far? How can a guy throw 70 yards but not 15? So the reason I haven't mentioned him is because the Tennessee Volunteers do not deserve my time. And they don't deserve your time either. They do not deserve rights, the Tennessee Volunteers. They don't deserve dinner. So with that said, the hypothetical idea of a quarterback that you only hear about them throwing far probably means that when they're throwing like in rhythm and on time, they're not accurate. But I haven't watched any Joe Milton. And if I can help it, I won't. Because I don't want to watch Tennessee. All right, let's get to some of the weirder questions next. The last part of these always gets a little bit funky, and I like that. So we'll get to those. Thank you so much to the sponsor of today's episode, FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So log on to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Sign up there if you haven't signed up before. And then when you make your first bet, you can pick anything. You can pick a prop you really like, a spread, an over-under, a money line. You can do live same-game parlays, whatever it is. No matter how short the odds are, assuming you still win it, you get $150 back in bonus bets. So you can find some minus 800 favorite, put $5 on it, and if they win, you get 30-1 on that. You're not going to find odds like that anywhere else. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up there to shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Of course, my hashtag everydayers. When you're done here, go check out the Locked On Minnesota Sports Today 24/7 YouTube channel. It's at the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel. Their live stream, all things Minnesota sports, all the biggest stories, following all the game recaps for the Wolves, big offseason stories for the Vikings and the Twins, and so on and so forth. Let's move on to the next one, which comes from Luke Braun from Ohio. I do not like this crossover happening right now. I don't like that these lores are meshing. But regardless, he asks, in a hypothetical world where the Vikings trade up in the draft but select Marvin Harrison instead of a QB and then re-sign Kirk Cousins, how potent do you believe the offense can be? I get what you're getting at there. Yeah, that would be super sick. You have this cool 3 deep thing going on with Addison and Jefferson and Marvin Harrison Jr. And then you have, Hawkinson when he comes back. You'd have a ton of sky high weapons, but I think my answer is still that thing tops out where Cousins tops out, which is a matter of consistency. They would be great for the games that Cousins is on. And when Cousins is off and he's throwing weird interceptions and he's, missing stuff downfield and getting mad at himself for missing opportunities, which he does all the time. That it doesn't matter how much talent you have. That's still going to kind of ruin you. And that's kind of been the problem for 6 years. Patrick asks, any news on if we're trying to re-sign Dalton Reisner? Thought he was solid and an A+ locker room guy. Okay. And no, I don't have any information here. That's not going to be really handled until after we hear about Cousins and Hunter. And nobody's going to ask about Dalton Reisner when you've got a much juicier couple of players to ask about with Jefferson too. So no, I don't have any answers for you. I apologize. But the reason I usually just wouldn't bother with a question if I don't know the answer to it. But the reason I pulled this is because it is fascinating that he has a reputation here as an A+ locker room guy. If you went to a Broncos person and told them that that's the narrative, they would be stunned. He did not leave Denver on good terms. He was getting in fights with the backup quarterback. There was a lot of talk about him being not well liked by some people. Now, who knows how true this is or that is. It's all he said, she said, right? But coming to Minnesota and being yeah, everybody here loves him and we're we really kind of want him back. Denver fans would be shocked. That's how it goes. Fresh starts are a thing. Dr. Bops asks, is there a player that hasn't really shown to be an asset yet that you think ascends this year? Possibilities of both of Booth or Asamoah or Scene, maybe Roy or Theo Jackson. Boy, I would love to say Scene here. I really want to say Scene here. I think Andrew Booth took a step forward last year. He's going to be the guy I always say when I get asked, who's your like breakout guy maybe? And I don't know if it even is breakout guy. Like there's still definitely issues, but it seems like he's not biting so hard on everything. It seems like he's playing a little bit more of a controlled style, and that's really, really good for him. So I would be curious to see what he can do with another offseason to work on his craft. Cozy asks, what secondary need, so no quarterbacks, no defensive ends, would you like the Vikings to allocate the most budget to in free agency? I did a couple of these, like a big time corner would be really cool. But I kind of don't know if the Vikings do that. Like they might be pretty happy with that corner room, happier than I am with that corner room, which is valid. You said no DEs, but you didn't say no DTs. So I'm going to say defensive tackle because they have like Harrison Phillips and the Pussycat Dolls right now. That's not good enough. So they probably need 2 players. And I don't know if you're going to have the draft capital to draft 2 starting caliber players because your first and your second round pick might have to go toward this quarterback thing. So you might need to get 2 starting defensive tackles with cap dollars. That feels like where it's going to be. Chow Chich asks, I watch 0 college football. It's very real of you. Watched Sam Hartman at the combine and it woke something in me. Will he lead the Vikings to the promised land, or was I falsely seduced by the best hair in the draft? Buddy, you might just be a little bit more into dudes than you think, which I've seen Sam Hartman. I get it. Cam X Storm asks, the draft from a workers' rights perspective is messed up. True! The top young talent are forced to play on below market contracts for up to 5 years and have little to no say in where they go. Yes, Cook. Could anything upset the current status quo? And if so, what would it look like? Like a lawsuit or something. I don't think the players have enough power in this to do anything about it. I don't think the union is strong enough, the NFLPA. They have more pressing fights to get to, like healthcare for veterans and stuff. And they're also losing those fights. So I wouldn't hold my breath for the NFLPA to step in here. I think what would need to happen is some sort of like monopoly deal. Something would need to spur the NFL to need to give their rookies a better deal. But right now, if you're a college football player and you want to make any money at all, you will subject yourself to this. What you would need is for like the UFL to become a legitimate competitor to the NFL and pass out more money, like the USFL did in the 80s. And that's how they pulled guys like Herschel Walker and Gary Zimmerman and Keith Millard into the USFL because they paid those guys. You would need the UFL to start waving around that kind of capital for the Vikings to try to make, or for the NFL to try to make a move like that. And to be honest, I don't know how permanent that would be either, because eventually the NFL will outspend anybody. I mean, it's the NFL. They're kind of invincible. Jettis Agent asks, could Herbert be a possible trade target? Convince Harbaugh to get his guy and McCarthy in McCarthy and rookie QB money to start his new tenure. Wouldn't hold your breath, buddy. Last one I'm going to do comes from Jim Buck, who asks, tell me why. Ain't nothing but a heartache. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm sure we might have news, and if not, we'll just kind of keep holding pattern here. Maybe talk some draft stuff, even something more abstract. It depends on the mood that I am in, and you are subject to that. Nothing you can do about it. I'll see you guys all tomorrow, and as always, Skull.